future of healthcare has arrived. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming the practice of medicine and improving patient outcomes. This is Smarter Healthcare with AI. Conversations with Dr. Hassan Tetteh as he shares insights into the healthcare of tomorrow and how we can help create it today.
Okay, I'm back with Dr. Ritu Agarwal, the co-director of the Center for Digital Health and Artificial Intelligence at Johns Hopkins. She's been sharing her journey in tackling healthcare's wicked problems through interdisciplinary approaches. Now, Ritu, with this perfect storm that you outlined in part one, the data, the compute power, and of course the improved models and techniques, do you believe that the adoption of technology in healthcare will accelerate? So, I'm asking for a prediction, actually. Do you think this adoption will be faster and more rapid in the years to come than it has been in decades before? Hopefully, we're not going to wait 30 years for the next stethoscope to be adopted.
Yeah. So a good friend of mine who was an economist told me, never make the mistake of making a prediction, but I will go ahead and make the prediction in any case. So, if you think about the pace at which technology grows, that's exponential. And let's look at the pace at which change happens within entrenched systems like healthcare. That's linear, right? And sometimes the gap between them can get pretty large. I'm optimistic that the gap between them is getting narrower every day. And why is that happening? It's happening because all of this attention focused on artificial intelligence is bringing this to conversations around all kinds of stakeholders. So not only is the healthcare industry very interested in driving this change, but so is the government because it helps save lives and save money. And so is the public because they want their healthcare to be better. So people like you and I feel like the technology might actually help us improve the experiences that we have with our healthcare system and also improve our health outcomes. So collectively, I think all of these forces are making hearts and minds more open to a digital transformation of healthcare. And now there's a certain level of inevitability. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And I expect that, change will be slow in the beginning, but once we figure out how to make things work, it will pick up very rapidly. And we're already seeing it. I don't think we have even started to document all of the changes that are actually happening, subtly behind the scenes, right? So AI is being used in so many different ways that we are, at this point, even unaware of. Yeah.
So this concept of hearts and minds is intriguing because, I'm certainly one of the people that's very excited about AI, its potential. Thus, Smarter Healthcare with AI as a conversation platform here with this podcast, and inviting experts like yourself to talk about this promise of this great technology. But of course, we've known throughout human history that when we employ and deploy and implement and scale and use technologies, there are also some things that we have to be concerned about. So recently, you convened a forum of experts, and we had a full day to talk about responsible AI for healthcare. In fact, it was in the Responsible AI for Healthcare Health Symposium that you convened at Hopkins. And the discussion there was very robust, and we certainly don't have time to rehash all of the conversations. But the question is, in this new sort of paradigm and era that we're living in, where the hearts and minds are certainly receptive to this new technology, we have certainly outlined a shift or an inflection point where the data, the compute power, and the models are all sort of giving us this perfect storm for rapid adoption. How do we responsibly adopt and implement AI moving forward, particularly in healthcare, where the stakes can be so high with lives at stake and lives that can be impacted and affected with this technology?
Yeah. And, that's the set of questions that keeps me awake at night. Right? So, we have a remarkable opportunity here with this technology, but there's also a huge risk. So let's make sure that we are able to take advantage of the upside and experience none of the downside. So what do I mean by that? We all know that despite a lot of discussion, a lot of acknowledgement, despite the fact that the previous director of the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, characterized bias as a systemic threat to public health, we still know that there are a lot of disparities that characterize the U.S. healthcare system. And, when your health outcomes are a function of the zip code you live in, or the race that you belong to, or your gender, or many other variables that have absolutely nothing to do with you as a person, then you start to worry that when we juxtapose this with technology that is a black box, which AI tools often are, that we will end up, really exacerbating these disparities, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the big picture of responsible AI. Mm-hmm. And in responsible AI, we want to make sure that we use AI as a double-edged sword, right? So we use AI not as a way to reify existing systemic racial disparities and other kinds of disparities of health inequities in our healthcare system, but we use it as a way to fix those problems, right? And what do I mean, fix those problems? Use AI to shine a spotlight on where we might have bad data. Use AI to understand where our modeling is failing and where we are not getting good predictive results for certain kinds of populations. Take our AI journey forward in a way so that it's safe, it's trustworthy. So a large part of the population that chose not to engage with the healthcare system because of, decades and a history of mistrust, and where we don't have data about these populations, let's not build models that are going to further marginalize them. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's not digitize the healthcare system to such an extent that, without extensive resources and extensive training, people can't use it. I mean, I'll just give you a simple example. Think about an AI that's established and implemented at Johns Hopkins. And you take that AI to a federally qualified healthcare center in rural Alabama. Mm-hmm. Is the AI going to function the same way? Are people going to respond and react and trust it the same way? No, they won't. So in my, sort of soapbox about responsible AI in healthcare, my argument always has been that let's make sure we take AI forward in a sector where decisions are life and death. Decisions have consequences that go beyond losing money or losing a reputation. Let's make sure we do it in a way so that we are assured of the outcomes. So that's the whole, I'm just giving you sort of a very 30,000-foot snapshot of the problem. As you've seen at our symposium, there are so many layers of nuance that go into it, right? So many discussions that go into it.
Yeah. And I can't help but think about a study I'm sure you're familiar with when you quoted the CDC director and talked about how, systemic bias could be a threat to public health. Now, on surface, you think to yourself, well, that seems to be true, but how does that practically translate? And the thing that resonated with me and came to mind immediately is a study where, as you probably are familiar, that they showed that in the in bathrooms in the restaurants where you have these automatic faucets where you put your hand there and then it dispenses water or soap, that they show that with darker skinned individuals, sometimes the water doesn't dispense and sometimes the soap doesn't dispense. So yeah. I can't help but think of, as a physician where we're constantly washing our hands, especially as a surgeon, and to kind of rewind back to, the pre-Lister era, how serious that is as a public health issue. So just imagine if you're a darker skinned individual, you go into the bathroom for whatever reason, and because this AI, this machine, this thing that's behaving to do like a human task, which is dispense water, which you would ordinarily do with the knobs, but now you're subject to the sensors, doesn't dispense water, you may leave the bathroom without washing your hands, and it's very possible you could contaminate something else or pass a germ or something on to someone else. And that does have a real serious consequence from a public health standpoint. So when you think about, this real true fact that introducing bias can in fact impact public health, and then you overlaid that with this opportunity we have a great opportunity, as you mentioned, to have AI actually shrink in and hopefully bring a decrease to that increase of bias. What do you think we can do as academics, as sort of practitioners in this space, to influence the policies that are necessary to ensure that responsible and ethical deployment of AI in healthcare actually happens?
Well, there are a number of levers that we can manipulate. And I think we have to manipulate all at the same time because we don't know which one's going to work the best, right? So one is, of course, the policy level. So we have, the executive order that came out of the White House, and, health was front and center in that executive order about safe, secure, and trustworthy computing, right? So those who have a passion for responsible AI can use that executive order as sort of a hammer, if you will, to have developers certify the safety and the security and the trustworthiness of their algorithms, right? As researchers, our job is to interrogate, to question, right? So when we build models, the first thing we do is to ask ourselves, okay, how is the performance of the model across different types of populations? Mm-hmm. Do we have a systemic underrepresentation of a certain kind of population? So the example that you gave of dark-skinned people being less represented in image databases, I mean, that is well known. And it's not just in image databases, in genome-wide association studies. If you look at biobanks, for example, they are majority Caucasian and majority white. So you make clinical discovery based on analysis of a biobank, you're going to end up with a prediction that will not apply to somebody who's not Caucasian and who's not white. The pulse oximeter story, where the pulse oximeter during that terrifying COVID time was not working so well for dark-skinned people. Right. And I have my personal story. My mother was, who is brown-skinned like me, 83 years old at that time. And I was petrified that, her pulse ox was not being read right at home. So representative data sets, model interrogation, checking for model drift. How does the model built at Hopkins, work at the federally qualified healthcare center, a lot of technical solutions that we can take to address this issue of bias. A third lever is greater community participation. And what I mean by this is, getting the communities that are not so engaged with the healthcare system, getting them to trust the system, getting them to trust researchers and providers, instilling that willingness to share their data, because eventually that's what's going to drive the quality of our models. So if we can take all these three levers at the same time, the policy lever, then the more technical scientific lever of model development and model deployment, and the third one is the community engagement, community participation one, I think we can at least start to envision a more equitable future for healthcare AI. Okay, but we're far from there yet. We are far from there yet. And I think we have a lot of hard work and heavy lifting to do.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the forum that you convened, so elegantly did bring these levers, or at least experts and representatives from these levers together to discuss this very crucial and important topic. We had policy representation, and certainly there were professionals from the technical side of things, and also community leaders. So I think the course has been charted, and thanks to you and your leadership, we're at least having the right discussions. So as our time is coming to an end, unfortunately, I do want to just shift a little bit to getting some of your great insight for those that are listening that are, academics, that are students, that are entrepreneurs. What would be your advice for those category of individuals, besides, of course, always collaborating with each other and not working in a vacuum? But so what words of advice would you have for those that are academics that are, pioneering their careers in this space of AI and healthcare, this intersection of healthcare and AI? And then for the students, of course, that I'm sure you have a lot of fondness for, and those that are going to be responsible for creating the next generation of technology and also delivering healthcare for us. And then, perhaps for the entrepreneurs and maybe even for our policymakers, what would be some words of wisdom for those communities?
Thanks. I am always hesitant to provide words of wisdom because I've learned.
Well, let me tell you.
I've learned over the years to be humble. That your words of wisdom are inevitably going to get turned around. But let me say a few things. I feel very strongly about this, and I have spoken on an AMA podcast about this. This whole business of sort of the next generation of clinicians, those who are perhaps still in medical school or considering medical school or just starting out in their careers. I hope they realize that the practice of healthcare, its systems and its business is going to be very different from what their parents experienced, what their grandparents experienced. And, that's a train that left the station a while back. There's no way we can turn it back. But by the time today's medical students start to practice medicine, the trajectory of digitization and automation is only going to get sharper. And, if you look at the data, 1/3 of millennials and I think about 40% of Gen Z, they say they prefer digital encounters with physicians over in-person visits, right? So these, the world is going to look very different. So, I would encourage medical students at least is, to get beyond Grey's Anatomy and whatever else you study in medical school and all those categories, I think understanding how digital technologies can be used to augment their work, to assist them, to make them more efficient, to enable them to have even more personalized interactions with their patients, spend less time on burdensome work and more time actually looking the patient in the eye. I think all of those are important things for them to be expanding their knowledge base about. Certainly an understanding of artificial intelligence, certainly enough of an understanding of the technology to be able to ask the questions, right? Because we don't expect them, in addition to their medical expertise, to become technical expertise as well, but they should know what questions to ask their model developers and model builders. For policymakers, I would just say that regulation is great. Data-informed, evidence-based regulation is even better. So, we have to find that a very careful balance between over-regulation and stifling innovation, and not enough regulation and not being able to protect patient privacy, security, have strict standards for quality, and so forth. I think those are the two communities that I want to speak to the most because, the research community is quite cognizant of what they need to do in this area.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I will have to push back a little bit on what you said about not being able to provide words of wisdom. You have given me a wealth of wisdom in our very first encounter that I can recall many months ago now, and certainly in every encounter since. And most recently at the symposium, it was just a great convening of brilliant minds and a great discussion, and one that was very inspiring and also very informative. And so for the policymakers, you've given a good direction of making data-informed regulation that strikes a balance between not stifling innovation, but making sure we deploy innovation in a very responsible way. And for the students, I think that's a really good insight, and that is for them to be aware of all of these things outside of medicine. I've been fortunate that my career has given me opportunities to learn a lot of things outside of the scope of just the discipline of surgery and heart surgery, and I've got to learned at Hopkins from great professors like you and others during my business training, and I got to do things in policy. But all in all, what you said is very, very poignant, and that is to ask the right questions, because asking the right questions will help to bring better answers that I think will lead to better healthcare, which is, I think, what everyone's goal is. Because it's never lost on me that no matter what you do in healthcare, what you do in academia, what you do in policy, and what you may even do as an entrepreneur, sooner or later you may be a patient or maybe have a loved one that is a patient. So we'll all be subject to the very system that we're all contributing to. So we better make it as good and as impactful and as effective as possible.
Yeah. You tell yourself that all of this is worth it because what you do is going to affect each and every person on this planet. That's a grandiose way of thinking about it. But, food, water, healthcare is something everybody needs.
Indeed. Very much so. Well, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with our audience on Smarter Healthcare with AI and sharing your incredible and very inspiring background and inspiring us all to really think critically about how you bring the social sciences, the data science, technology, and healthcare all together, because you are certainly bridging many fields and doing it remarkably well. And I must say I've learned a lot and continue to learn a lot from your work. And I'm so looking forward to our continued relationship and fellowship. And thank you for spending this time with our audience. I'm sure everyone has learned a great deal from you.
Thank you, Hassan. I enjoyed it.
And that's going to do it for this episode of Smarter Healthcare with AI. Please make sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This has been Smarter Healthcare with AI. If you'd like to find out how to bridge the gap between medical experts and tech innovators and discover how AI can make us healthier and more human, go to tedda.com. Smarter Healthcare with AI with Dr. Hassan Tetteh is a production of Forbes Books.